Now, the hybrid dropdown has got several configurations that can be used in the settings. These are listed in this table. But more importantly, there is some very powerful features that can be used to dynamically interact and configure the fields within a page as and when a user interacts with a form, for example, with several fields on it. One of them is the ability to use the select label. The selected label is actually a JavaScript function, and this allows you to customize how a given selected value appears in the field by default. So when a drop down is open and a value is selected, you can actually configure how the selected label looks like. Furthermore, the option label also is something that can be set, and we have the where's the option label? The option label is also a JavaScript function whereby you can customize how each label of an option looks like. By default, it's just a label text. However, you could pass in your JSON object construct, you could pass some URLs to images and therefore build a drop-down with images as labels for users to select. And last but not least, there is also the option list. The list option. So the list option, this is a function again that by default returns true, but it can be customized so that certain options are shown in the drop-down list according to some other variable on your page. So an example would be if you have a form with multiple fields. If a field, one of those fields changes, you could pick the value of that field, and depending on the value of the field, you could then configure your drop-down to have only certain options listed. So this is actually useful to have variable lists to be shown to a user depending on what they've selected in the form. So the list option can actually filter through the entire list of options that have been provided at initialization and only return a certain number of those to be visible. And in order to complete this, there is a method called refresh, and basically whenever you need to actually trigger a change in the visible list of options, you call the refresh method, and in the refresh method you can then reconfigure the function for the list option. So initially the list option would return only certain values, and subsequently when you call the refresh method, you could change the function so as to use a given value in the form that would actually reflect what needs to be listed in the drop down. And of course the refresh can accept any of these values above, and there are some quite funky examples that you can see in the section here as to what can be done with the refresh button. A quick example here, we have a visual styling change which reflects whether the field has been selected or not. So here, whenever a value is being selected, automatically the field is being refreshed, and the value is actually being the color theme of the field is being changed to reflect the fact that a value has actually been selected. And if you go back to the default value, then it changes back to the original color theme. And there's a little explanation of how here you have the JavaScript which is being called, and you have this refresh button being used, method which is being used, and the refresh has to be called on the hybrid object, and the hybrid object resides automatically in the target element. So whatever element you initially initialize the the hybrid on, this same element is then got this hybrid object stored within the element itself, has underscore hybrid dd, and this is the object on which you want to call the refresh method. Another example that we can look at where all these are combined together is, for example, this image grid, where the drop down is set to none, and there is a series of JSON object with images. This is passed. There are examples of how to actually set your JavaScript object in this case here, for example, and once the labels are being built using the option label setting, which has a function, and you can see here that the option label is built using an image which is sourced from the data that is passed in the JSON object, and this builds a little thumbnail with a little caption below it with the title of that image.